Well, we're pleased to have Jim Gwartney here with us this morning. Jim Gwartney is professor of economics and also director of the Stavros Center for Economic Education at Florida State University. Jim is perhaps best known as the co-author of Economics, Private and Public Choice, a great economics textbook that is now in its 15th. I'm 2 editions behind. 15th edition. How many have read Jim's textbook? Oh, a lot. Jim, including Jim. How many have your students read it? Okay, good. Quite a few there, too. Excellent. He is also co-author of Economic Freedom of the World, an annual report that provides data on the institutions and policies of 141 countries. Jim is past president of the Southern Economic Association and the Association for Free Enterprise Education. A member of the Mont Pelerin Society, Gwartney was invited by the Putin administration in March of 2000 to make presentations and have discussions with leading Russian economists about the future of the Russian economy. They didn't listen. In 2004, Jim received the Adam Smith Award of the Association of Private Enterprise Education. Jim's topic today is Common Sense Economics for Life. Please welcome Jim Gwartney. Jim, you're doing great. Good to have you with us today.
Okay. Thanks, Bert. Bert mentioned that part about Vladimir Putin didn't listen. Actually, he did listen, but not for very long. The major focus of what the meetings that we had to do with their tax policy. And essentially, they had a marginal tax rate counting both payroll and income that ran to something like 70%. And we were able to convince them, hey, that wasn't a very good idea. And in any case, you have 75% of your income that's going unreported. So you might do better to charge lower rates, which, if you'll recall, Russia did institute a flat rate tax at 13%. But that was long ago in terms of the reason why I was invited is because of Andrei Alernoff, who was involved with us in the Economic Freedom of the World project from very early on, was Putin's chief economist. And a lot of people don't really realize that when Putin first ran, the first time that he was elected after being opposed, he ran as a sort of reform type of candidate. And he was open to these kinds of ideas, but as is in the case of so many of our own political leaders, that once they get there with the ring of power on their hand, that it becomes difficult for them to stand up to it. Well, in any case, I want to think with you a little bit about economics and delivery of economics. And I must say that I found it to be a very fascinating morning. And in many ways, it's kind of an introduction to what John and I want to share with you, in the sense that we think that education, the delivery of education, is in a transition. And obviously, there's been a lot of changes in the last few years, but I expect that it's going to continue, and maybe even as recently as 5 years from now, we'll sort of look back and sort of say, man, I can't believe we did it that way back there in 2014. One of the things that sort of comes out of our morning discussion is online education means a lot of different kinds of things, and it involves different types of delivery systems. And we've developed a package called Common Sense Economics for Life, which is built around the little book, Common Sense Economics, which I'm going to get to and share a little bit with you. But essentially what we are trying to do is, as Gary mentioned it at Hillsdale, reach as many people as possible with the sound economics. And we were a little bit set back when we kind of looked at what the statistics are in terms of economics. You know, 60% of students in the United States graduate from college without ever taking a course in economics. Now, a lot of us are involved in principles of economics, and the book that Bert mentioned, Economics, Private and Public Choice, is designed for a micro and macro principles class, which is predominantly those classes are taken by economics majors and business majors. But there's a whole nother universe of students out there who don't take any economics, and if they do take economics, they take micro and macro principles, which to a large degree, we either really turn them off about, they say, I can't believe anybody is interested in this stuff, or that we're not really giving them what they need to know. So what we set out to do with Common Sense Economics was to develop a course that really covered what if students were going to take only one course in economics. This course, we think, really hits on the things that are most important for them to know. We are doing it with regard to communicating these sort of broader set of concepts and ideas, which are practical and have relevance to people's lives in a number of different ways. First, our Economics 2000 course. Now, this is a course that's taken by students who are majoring in neither business nor economics. This course, Common Sense Economics for Life, the core part of it is, in fact, that course. We teach it both online, and we teach it in a seated class. And we teach it with a lot of video clips, a lot of in some cases, some audio type of readings, but really focusing on making it interesting and even fun. And we have various types of activities built into it that illustrate the importance of the concepts. So that's kind of, that's one of the things that we do. A second thing that we do is we want to improve the quality of teaching of economics at the high school level. And I must say, I've been a little bit surprised to find out that high school teachers, at least some of them, are really quite eager to learn more about economics and learn more about how to improve their teaching at the high school class. We now offer an online course designed for high school teachers involving a lot of the video clips and everything that actually John is going to take you through, so I won't go into too much about that. But we offer it for, it's a non-credit, but it's the very same course as our kind of actually embellished version of our Economics 2000, taken by non-economics, non-business majors at FSU. And the course is available for $60. Anybody can sign up for it. And that it's a regular 15-week kind of course. There's an online, there's an instructor involved with it and interaction with them, and we really get to know these teachers. And then at the end of the course, and we make this available right up front, at the end of the course, we'll make this entire package available to them on Blackboard or Moodle or whatever kind of course management system that they might be interested in. So a third thing that we're now experimenting with that starts actually November 3rd, the very first one, is on Canvas we're offering an abridged version of Common Sense Economics for Life, free of charge as a MOOC. And we didn't know what kind of results to get. It opened up about a month ago. And we're not up into the kind of numbers that Hillsdale was talking about, but we're expecting we already have close to 1,000 students that are signed up for that MOOC. There's information. We have a table in the back. Fred Franson will be back there at that table. And that the information is about the MOOC and how you might want to sign up. And if you would like to know more about this course, that information will be available at the booth back there. Well, let me turn a little bit to the sort of outlining what Common Sense Economics for Life is built around the book. Some of you are probably familiar. I guess I should take a poll, Bert, but the blind man can't tell how many people are raising their hands, so why would I want to take a poll? The Common Sense Economics, What Everyone Should Know About Wealth and Prosperity, is really a book that Tony Ferrarini and Dwight Lee and Rick Stroop and I put together, designed to cover the things that we think that students really ought to know. That's kind of out of our larger textbook, but we eliminate all the graphs. I think the book itself has only one supply and demand graphs, a few other graphs presenting some data. Now, the package has more graphics and dynamic kinds of stuff. But we don't want to intimidate students. It's organized to be very user-friendly, divided into 4 parts. The first part is 12 key elements of the economic way of thinking. We make a simple statement like incentives matter, and that's where you start. It's a basic postulate of economics, that what gives economics the power is the fact that people respond to incentives in a predictable way. And so we give a brief explanation of what the statement is, then show a number of applications to it. So, as you might anticipate, in sort of 12 key elements, we cover things like the importance of exchange, gains from trade, opportunity costs, of course, supply, demand, role of profits and losses, invisible hand, and remembering the secondary effects and highlighting that it's important to integrate into your economic way of thinking, that in addition to the direct elements, that a lot of changes also have indirect, very important, often, elements that are visible only with the passage of time. Part 2 is on creating an environment for economic prosperity. 7 elements of the institutions that are important for growth and prosperity. And Burton mentioned that I've been involved in the measurement of economic freedom, which is really a project about what kind of institutions are present in different countries. And in many ways, this part 2 of Common Sense Economics is about those institutions that really make a difference in terms of the growth and prosperity that a country can observe. What do you highlight there? Well, what's more important than the incentive structure that comes out of a legal system where you have property rights clearly defined and enforced? What's important about private ownership is the incentive structure, giving people an incentive to take care of things, giving people an incentive to develop what they own privately, whether they're talking about skills that they might develop in terms of their human capital, or whether you're talking about property, of physical property, but an incentive to develop in a way that others value highly because you're able to capture those benefits. And even an incentive to conserve for the future, and why that as a student or any individual, you really don't have to worry about the world running out of oil or running out of this or the other kind of thing, because the market's going to solve that. So relax and enjoy it, and don't worry about those kinds of things. So, but it's incentives associated with private ownership. Dynamic competition, openness of markets. We've sort of highlighted here that even in the area that we're focusing on, that innovation is taking place, and that individuals striving to be successful, they need to be able to provide goods and services that people value highly relative to cost. And what was successful last week or last month or last year may not be so successful in the future. And so you have this sort of dynamic. Now, that's what's really important about competition. Now, I know in the introductory book that I co-authored that we go into perfect competition and present the title, the model, and all that sort of thing. But we also highlight that, hey, even within that model, it's this competitive process. That's what's really important. Well, that's what we highlight as we think about the environment for growth and prosperity. And I don't want to spend too much time here on part 2, but we obviously highlight such things as avoid regulations that interferes with private agreements that individuals would have, the importance of access to sound money, the importance of keeping taxes relatively low, because high taxes have damaging incentive effects and so on, and the importance of free trade. So essentially part 2 is about the kind of why it is that some nations grow and prosper. There was a guy a couple hundred years ago who wrote a book about that, something called The Wealth of Nations. Well, we cover that in part 2 and really get at what those factors that are important in terms of creating an environment for prosperity. Part 3 is about economics and the role of government. To this group of people, I might just say part 3 is about public choice. It's about, really in economics, often that we address the issue about ideally what the government might do to solve some kind of an economic problem. But that's not really, in terms of economics and learning something from economics, that's not the important question. The important question is, how would you expect this process of voting, this form of economic organization, how would you expect it to work? If you don't know anything about how that process works, you don't have any kind of a clue about whether or not that ideal solution is likely to be instituted, or a lot of other crazy things done instead of adopting that ideal solution. So we apply the tools of economics, and of course what comes out of that is this voting process and a electoral type of process where essentially the majority, either directly or typically in the form of a representative government, that it has some attributes. It tends to be special interest driven. It tends to be short-sightedness. And part of that short-sightedness is politicians prefer debt financing to taxes. Man, does that give us any insight about how the real world really works? Do we sort of see some governments that kind of use a lot of debt financing? You see, it's important to address this issue about how that political process really works. And the transfer segments, the limitations about what can be achieved with taxing one group of people and making transfers to another group of people, and empirically looking at the evidence about how that works. Okay, it's dangerous to give a professor a microphone. Gary talked about being a rock star. I don't know. I mean, can a blind man be a rock star? But the problem is he can't see how bad he looks or things of that sort. So I need to keep going. Part 4 is about personal finance. Wow, this is something that's virtually never covered in the economics classes at either the college level, and increasingly now it's being covered at the high school level. But students need to know something about relevant to making career choices, how you go about thinking about those things. They need to know things about budgeting. They need to have an idea about savings and why it's important to save for things, surprise kind of experience, to have a rainy day fund, if you like. Because there's a number of things that are going to be unexpected expenses, but they're unexpected only with regard to their timing, not whether you're going to have them or not. Your car is going to break down. The roof is going to begin to leak. You're going to have all those kinds of things, and you can either wait till they happen and put them on your credit card and pay 18% interest and lay awake at night about how you're going to deal with your bills, or you can establish a savings fund to deal with those kinds of things. So we highlight practical things related to personal finance and related to savings and investment. So these are the things that we think that students ought to know. That John Kessler is going to come and or I don't know, maybe you're going to speak from the table, John, but John is part of a team that we assembled to put together this common sense for economics for life, involving Tony Ferrarini and John Morton. Some of you may know Mark Shug, but people who have involved our economic education for a long time have all contributed to this package, and John is one of our key contributors, and he's going to share a little bit more detail. We thought it'd be better to have the non-blind man do the details. Thank you all.
Well, thank you for having me this morning. When 2006, I was hired by IPFW in Fort Wayne to come up and teach their economics courses for their non-majors. And when I arrived, I inherited a textbook by Greg Mankiw from my predecessor, who had been using that. And I arrived, of course, 3 days before the semester started, so I had to use the book that was already being sold at the bookstore. Found out later my students were being charged between $150 and $200 for that textbook, and then were charged an additional fee to access the content that was on Blackboard if we wanted to use any of that. And of course, we all know with the rising cost of tuition these days, one of my goals immediately was to try to find a cheaper version for my students who were not going to be going on and majoring in economics and taking any other additional economics courses. It was around that time that I was invited to a Liberty Fund conference with Jim and Tani about common sense economics, and that was how I was introduced to the book. And so I adopted it immediately, because at a price point of about $15 for this book, it allowed me to cover the things that I thought were essential for these students to know, and none of the things that were really not essential for them going forward in life. And the feedback I've received from students is great, because they actually are reading this textbook as opposed to the other ones where they would thumb through it and just decide this wasn't worth their opportunity cost. So with CSE, I've been very impressed with the ability to use this to the point where, as my role as the director of the Center for Economic Education, I've reached out to some of the high school teachers in our community, and through our dual enrollment process at the university, we now have between 8 and 10 high school teachers using this textbook and these materials in their classes with their students each semester, and those students are receiving college credit through IPFW for taking the course. So I do see the value here. I think it's an incredibly useful resource package. Let me just tell you a little bit about what is inside of here and how you might be able to use it and adapt it in your course. Each module, and the resource is broken into about 15 modules so that you would work through 2 or 3 elements in the textbook each week and cover it in about a semester's length course. In each module, you're going to start with some pre-learning questions where we ask the students to think about their preconceived ideas and tell us up front what they think they know about some of these questions that we're going to get into. They are clear learning objectives and concepts that cover the 51 standards from the National Council for Economic Education. So there's a PowerPoint guide to help them as they're reading through the textbook to guide their thought process and highlight the key points. And then each section has this read, watch, listen, and do activities in each of these modules. So they're going to read a portion of the textbook. They're going to read some of these additional supplemental readings that we have for them. They're going to then watch a series of videos about the concepts. There's some listening they can do. There are actually MP3 audio files of every single written reading that we have for them is available for download, so they can take that on their iPhones or on their MP3 players, listen to them while they're on the bus or driving to and from school, and for quite a few students take advantage of that. And then there's a practical assignment that they can do from that point. So in like part 4, there's actually a budget exercise for them, one that they would pay a financial advisor to work them through for a couple $100. We have put on this resource package for them to use at no cost. So there's a practical assignment attached to each one of these. Then we have an assessment, figure out, okay, how are you doing? Are you catching on to this information? And then we ask them to go back to their original pre-learning discussion post and enact with themselves prior to what they learned and see, okay, what have I learned now? Have I changed my mind about what I thought I knew previously? And then we lead them with a prompt into the next module and prepare them for what they're going to be doing in the next section. So each of the 15 modules follows this kind of format and has these kinds of resources in it. So I wanted to give you just sort of a highlight of some of the kinds of video resources and stuff that we have combined in here for you. So take a look at this.
What did you eat for breakfast?
Orange juice with toast and strawberry jam.
That's economics.
That'll create jobs.
Watch as I work to mow my lawn, build a fence, and install a faucet. All at the same time.
Great, I'll take you.
Yes, you will. And I will take $350 for taxes.
Whoa!
There's not a single person in the world who could make this pencil.
Don't buy stuff you cannot afford.
So that just gives you a feel of the kinds of video clips the students are watching as they're doing this. And we have created these sort of interim videos to guide them with a professor and a student having these conversations about, well, why do I need to even bother with economics? What's the point of taking this class, and how does this really relate to my life? So for each of the modules and the sections in the book, there's this conversation happening between the student as we kind of watch her go through the semester, and it leads them into thinking about how these sections might relate to themselves as they go forward. So I'm going to skip this next video because we really don't have time to show you. I was hoping to have some time to show you that, but oh, boo, I know. Deal with it, opportunity cost, scarcity, life sucks, I know. It's all right. if you want to see it, get the package. It's all there, okay? So
We can run it at the end during the break.
the videos really are high quality and entertaining, interesting to the students, but the package as a whole is going to give you a pre and a post test that's been normed nationwide. We've been using these resources at a variety of schools in high school and universities across the country, so you can compare your students with other students around the country. Each of the modules has the key concepts and the discussion board questions. You're going to get high quality videos, podcasts, classical and contemporary readings about the concepts. There are 14 assignments out of the 15 modules. There's 12 supplemental units and that we've also created for those of you who might be teaching a traditional principles type course who might want to use these resources as a supplement for your class. So there's really a robust set of resources here that you can use for the non-major kind of survey course, or that you can use to go into even deeper detail on some of these concepts with your students as well. We then have a series of 8 controversial topics as well, and a comprehensive set of test bank questions to allow for random test question generation in the online learning platforms. So some of the supplements we have for the traditional economics concepts are the supply and demand module, of course, with only having one graph in the textbook. Some people, of course, have demanded more graphing, and so we have a supplement for those who want to get into more detail on that in a traditional course. Might make sense. There's a section on national income and employment statistics, so if you want to talk about GDP, unemployment, how we measure inflation, those types of questions. Section on monetary and fiscal policy. Of course, it's important for the students to understand how the Federal Reserve operates and how these things affect the business cycle. And then lastly, some of the historical economic episodes comparing the Great Depression with the Great Recession and how they're similar and, of course, different as well, and helping students kind of understand what led to the Depression, what led to the recession, and what maybe we can do about those things. We also now have created some personal finance supplements and are hoping to put together a resource package specifically for those who might be interested in doing a personal finance only type of course. So we're adding in here questions about how to choose a career, the importance of education and skills in the job search, questions about credit and debt and how to not get into too much debt, how to use credit wisely, the questions of investing and saving, the importance of that, and then, of course, insurance and spreading risk over a lifetime, those types of questions. One of the things that we are working on currently that I'm really excited about is our values-based, our faith-based supplements. We're creating a course and resources for homeschool and Christian schools currently that will be specifically and explicitly faith-based in nature, as well as one that is values and character-based for maybe a non-Christian school, but one that still cares about these types of issues. We're looking at questions like economics, work, and happiness, taking Arthur Brooks' work on the idea of earned success and how that leads to happiness, questions of stewardship and giving and how charity leads to happiness and the effects of that both on the giver and the receiver of charity. Looking at economics, markets, and morality and these sorts of questions. The economics of poverty, looking at the idea of how do we help people in poverty, and of course the stuff that Acton has and that the Institute for Faith, Work, and Economics have been very helpful in helping us organize some of these. And then lastly, the economics of the environment, looking at questions of the importance of property rights and questions of the tragedy of the commons, those sorts of things. So a lot of things going on right now with this package, a lot of great resources that are available to you to use right away. We would love to be able to get that in your hands and help you in any way that we can in integrating that into your class. If you want more information, please see Fred Franson over at our table. We'd love to get your contact information so that we can be in touch and see how we can adapt this to work in your environment and your school with your students. You can email Fred, and if you really want to get kind of a sneak peek of what's in there, join us for the MOOC that we mentioned earlier that starts November 3rd. You can go to canvas.net, search for Common Sense Economics, and join us. I think we're a little over, you say close to 1,000 people signed up for that right now. We're hoping to have a few more before November 3rd, but that will get you an idea as well of the overview of what's in this package. So thank you for your time.